Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Book It Like a Beast, the pro wrestling podcast, with yours truly, Pierre Vachon. That's right, a 20-year-plus professional wrestling veteran, talking about pro wrestling, about what goes on in the business, and talking about the inside of how to make pro wrestling better for your promotion, or as an indie wrestler or a wrestler in general, how to improve what you do in the ring. So today, we are going to talk about telling the story in the ring, the ring psychology, if you will, the idea of telling a story with your body in the ring for people to invest their time and energy into, and how to get them into that, and some of the mistakes we make in professional wrestling with the idea of that. Now, when you hear this a lot, if you're a smart fan, wrestling fan who's in the know, knows a lot of stuff about professional wrestling, you've heard the term, or you've said it yourself, oh, they told a great story, or you need to tell a story in the ring. Those type of things, is that the match is a story. And here, to those who may not be as in tune with wrestling, here's what they mean. So professional wrestling is a play. It's essentially a movie, a play. It's a comic book come to life. It's right in front of you. And each match is its own story, meaning there might be some, overlying storylines that promoters do that are like a thread through the show or might come up later. But each match is an individual short story. And the basis of pro wrestling is good and evil. That's really what it boils down to. It's all about good and evil. When you're building your story, you have someone that the crowd wants to cheer on, and you have someone that the crowd hates. You have to have a monster for your hero to vanquish. That's old, basic storytelling. Old as time. That's what it is the story is. You have to root for someone, and you have to hope somebody fails, and that's basically what you're building in a professional wrestling ring. Now, when you watch a play, stuff like that, you're watching it happen in words with sometimes some action, but it's usually the words and how the character is presented that gets you over. In this scenario, it's all about that you're looking to tell the story using your body and your words. Promos are important and getting a character across, but you're trying to build a story. And the story has to engage an audience and grip them and draw them in for that 6, 10, 20, 30 minutes, hour, however long your match is. You, when you get in the ring, have to worry about telling your story and building that moment to have that connection with the crowd. Now, that's done in a lot of different ways when you get into professional wrestling, into the real deep nuggets of it, and the pulling it apart. There's a lot to it, and it's not something I'm going to be able to cover every ounce of it in a podcast. So we're just going to go over some basic concepts and things that I notice. I've been doing this a long time, traveled all over. I've worked with some of the legends of professional wrestling, and I've watched a lot of young guys come up and blow up and become huge, and I've been part of their journeys as well as myself, doing a lot of traveling, seeing a lot of wrestling, and getting a lot of knowledge. And that's all I want to do with this episode, is try to throw knowledge at you. You don't have to take it. If you're a professional wrestler and you don't want to listen to it, shut it off. Or if you think I'm full of shit, that's fine too. But I just want to give you an opportunity to maybe pick up some different perspectives. So the whole concept of telling a story in wrestling, like I just said, is you have to build that story up. A lot of times people think that they're telling a story when they hit a bunch of big moves and it's fast action and the crowd's popping, and then they win or lose and the crowd is either boos or cheers or whatever. That's not really telling a story. That's giving them a lot of sizzle with no steak. And we see it a lot right now. You see a lot of this new style. I'm not saying I want everyone to go back to headlocks and all that shit. Don't go say what I mean is that we're not connecting enough with characters in the broader sense. when you look at AEW and WWE and all those bigger promotions, even OVW that has a weekly television show, even though it's pay-per-view, and it's great, by the way. If you haven't checked out OVW's weekly pay-per-views, their thing on Netflix, The Wrestlers, is really good, but the actual OVW that Al Snow is running is phenomenal. I really enjoy the product and what they're building and what they do out there. The weekly pay-per-views are great, but they're a weekly televised show, just like WWE, AEW. They have a lot bigger advantage to you in the terms of storytelling, because they have a national audience, and they have a weekly show that can build up, everything they're doing. So the characters that you're more invested in because you see them weekly, they're pushed in front of you. There's promos. There's all of this. When you're doing these indie shows as an independent wrestler, when you're starting out and you're doing all these smaller shows, you don't have that. Most of these promoters are running once a month. And here's the thing. When you run once a month, you don't get the same retention from your fans. So when promoters are running one show a month, you will get some people who come to all of your shows, and you will get some casual fans who will show up because pro wrestling's in town. And often, in a future episode, we're going to talk about why a lot of people in your own town don't know that you are doing a show. And that's a whole marketing thing that I want to talk about. But the whole idea is that if you're only doing a monthly show, unless you are working something where every week online you're putting out product, and even then, some of those casual fans that come to your actual show that put money in your pocket are not watching all that. They're not watching the internet. One of the big things AEW was doing is they were putting storylines on AEW Dark, like the YouTube channel, and a lot of their fan base wasn't even watching that. So you have to remember that not everybody is consuming your product 24/7. So when you get them in the tent, when you get them in your space, because pro wrestling is the circus, and when they show up to be at the show, they have to be entertained right then and there and get their money's worth when they walk through that door for that show that you're doing. So a lot of you are thinking way too far ahead when you think of stories and like book and psychology. You need to worry about right there and then grabbing them with your match. And you can do that. You don't have to be a name. You don't have to be a big, well-known character to get people to buy into your match. It's so simple. And I'm going to break it down with an easy run through of a basic psychology match and explain the story. So I'm going to do it from the perspective of you have a big, monstrous heel. Big guy doesn't mean I don't care. Jacked, fat, whatever it is, just a big heel. And then you have a baby face who is smaller, okay? Much smaller. Definitely looks like they're overpowered. You have to remember that all of these stories, when you tell them in the ring, people try to connect them to something in their real life. I mean, subconsciously, I think every fan does this. You have that boss that you can't stand, or you were bullied in school, and there's that bully that you wish you could have kicked their ass, but you never did, because either you didn't have the skill, or you weren't a fighter, or that sort of thing, but it's something you always dreamed about. Or you have that boss that you have to go deal with, or you have that ex-spouse who treated you like shit, made you angry, got you frustrated, and now you don't know what to do. And that's what you're worried about is, that's the thing that really pisses you off. And you get to see this play out, and you can kind of fantasize of you being in that story. That's why we watch movies, action heroes, and romantic dramas where you wish you were the lead. That's what it is. You need everybody when you get into the ring to wish they were you and that you were going to do the thing, or wish that they were living through you vicariously. So you need to get people's attention because they're connecting to you, not your moves. Your moves don't mean shit. Your moves have to look good. Your wrestling has to look good and believable, but that's not what the crowd is connecting to. And if they're connecting to your moves, and that's all that you get over is because you do really cool flips and fly through the air, then you're not connecting with them on a level that's going to make them give a shit about you past your match or not remember you, because they're going to see 14,000 friggin' Hurricane Ranas, planchas, all that stuff in the night. So that doesn't matter. Your moves don't matter when it comes to that. What matters is you need to connect with that crowd, and everything you do when you get into that ring is what connects to that crowd. So, if you're the big heel, you got a big monster heel walking into the ring, he has to give off, or she have to give off, an air of superiority and an air of cockiness or fear or anger or something to make everybody notice and connect. And you could do that a million ways. Walk around the front, walk around the ring, and when everyone's trying to slap hands with you, turn your back to them. Don't look at them and tell them to put their hand down, or whatever you need to do. You don't need to swear. You don't need to insult everybody directly. You can insult people in promos. I've done it a lot. But you could do it just by simply how you approach the crowd gives them the thought to know that you're an asshole and they don't like you already. Either you were the bully or you're the boss, or like I said, you're the ex, or whatever it is. In their head, they've connected you to something that they can't stand. And one of the biggest things for telling a story in the ring is connecting eyes with the crowd. When you're working, take the time to deal with that crowd. It's a thing that the TV doesn't have. When you have those big TV tapings, they can't do that as much. They have to focus more on their hard cameras so that they can't tell the story as much to the people in that space, because they don't really care. Those people are invested already because they watch it on TV, and this is the first time they're coming to a live event, or maybe they show up when it's in their town. So they're already invested. So they're more worried about getting the story out to the big cameras that go to the millions of people watching at home. Whereas when you do an indie show and you walk in there, you need to get that 100, 200, 300, 8 people, whatever it is, connected to you in that moment. It's not about what's happening down the road or your big elaborate long drawn out storyline that 8 people remember and the other 200 don't give 2 shits about. It's about in that moment, you need somebody in that crowd, and it's a wave effect. If you can get 1 or 2 people to start connecting with you, it will create a synergy, a wave of that, a mob mentality. And that's what you need to build up. So you need to pick those people out that you can look at, that you can look dead in the eye, that you can tell are already invested, and try to get them to sell it to everybody else to be invested in you. So if you're walking out as a heel, you need to start right off. When you get out, when you're walking through that, the curtain, whatever it is, you need to have it ready that you are out there and you mean business, and you're out there to do what you're supposed to do, which is bully, hurt, win. And that's all you're trying to do. You're trying to get over. You're trying to win by any means necessary, whatever it is. The whole definition of a heel is you're the one that everybody hates because you do the things that they think are wrong, and you do them and you think you're right, and you think you're a victim. That's a big one. Some of the best heels, Dutch Mantell says this, and I fully agree with him. Some of the best heels always come across like they are a victim. And you'll see it in the ring with psychology of, babyface hits a big bunch of moves, bop, 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 hip toss, arm drag, whatever, hits them back to back. And then the heel will go into the ropes and say, hey, he pulled the hair. He never touched his hair, but that's him playing a victim, which pisses everybody off because they saw with their own eyes that wasn't true, and they are just doing it to stall, give themselves time. That is the trick. That is the secret, is you need the crowd to be mad at you because you're making those shortcuts, taking those excuses, or you're overpowering. You're doing things that are sadistic, that they know are terrible, and they want to see you get beat up for it. So you get a big guy out there, big heel, doing the big push, doing the big, build up, that sort of thing. And then your baby face comes out. Your baby face comes out second. That's a psychology thing. Send your heel out first, bring your baby face out next. That way you can pop your crowd. So baby face comes out. When you get out there, you have to personify something. Just wearing tights and having a name and being able to wrestle and $1 million body don't mean shit. Because there are some ugly fat bastards who have made way more money than you because they were charismatic and they worked that crowd. Dusty Rhodes was not was not a physical specimen. Well, he was in his own way, but that guy knew how to connect with a crowd just by walking out there, and then knew how to connect with his moves in the ring to sell that match, to get people behind him. His promos helped, and we'll talk about promos in a little bit because they are important. But the whole point is that you have a story to tell in that 8 to 10, 12, 20 minutes, whatever they give you to wrestle. And in that time, you have to get a beginning, middle, and end. That's a big thing. This whole idea of long-term storytelling is TV thinking in a circus mentality. The circus doesn't show up and tease you that next time they come, they'll bring a lion. Doesn't matter. They want you right now to be satisfied so you'll come back next time and you remember that. That is the secret. You can't, with all these smaller promotions and when you're learning the business of professional wrestling, stop thinking like you're in the WWE right now or AEW. Start thinking that you're a pro wrestler first. Learn your fundamentals. And the fundamentals are you need to tell the story that's in the ring right now, not the story that's 6 months from now. Nobody gives a shit about that in that place. They care about what they're watching right then and there, what they're going to witness. So you're that baby face and you come out. You have to give them something. Give them a reason. Now, sometimes the crowd might not come right with you. They might not be feeling you yet, and that's okay. You could still get them in the story. Not everybody loves every hero. Sometimes you got people who love the villain or whatever, and that happens. And what you have to do is you have to start the work right when you get out there, once you get in the ring. So let me break this down when you get in the ring. Every movement you make in the ring means something. It's not throwaway. You should really think about how what you're doing in the ring will set up the story for the match. So I'm going to book you a real basic story right now between these two. You got a fiery, smaller baby face, doughy-eyed, everyone's into them, thinks they look like the kid next door, and yeah, we're with them. And then you got the big brooding heel, big monster, whatever it is. Now, the first thing you need to do is you need to build a David and Goliath story with this, right? So when you build a David and Goliath story, the psychology should be is that this little guy is not going to pick up this big guy and throw him around and flip him all over the place. Stop that shit. Break it down to the most basic concept. Everybody knows that guy is stronger and bigger, and you're going to be scared of that. Show a little bit of fear. Stop. You don't have to always be the cool, tough guy because you're not. That's not real life. If Brock Lesnar walked up to my ass and said he wanted to fight, I'd be scared shitless. I would, no matter how much I'd think I'm going to try to fight, I would still go for it. And I'd get my ass handed to me. I know that. But I'd be scared, and people around me, if I didn't look scared, would think I'm a fucking fool. And it's the same thing when you're in that ring. It's okay to show a little bit of nervousness because then the crowd can build up with you and you help them bring your confidence up by cheering you on. So if you start out with that, whoa, this is a lot, and then all of a sudden the crowd starts getting behind you and you start coming back and they're cheering because they want to see it, and you're using that energy as part of how you build up, you now have a crowd behind you. And now whatever that heel does to you, they're going to be pissed off at him. And that gets both of you over in the ring with the crowd. And every move you do, if he sells a little bit more, then you're both over. But you got to connect and you have to show things. I want every wrestler out there, and you've had trainers tell you this, and I'm going to say it again. 1, take a fucking acting class. Take acting courses for real. Take improv courses, those kind of things. Learn some acting work if you're not an actor already. Some actors get into wrestling. I was an actor and when I got into wrestling. So use your facial expressions. Sit at home and put yourself in holds, imaginary holds, and make large facial expressions. Sell. Learn to sell every hold, not just wait for your next spot, which happens a lot when people are in the ring these days. And selling, as we talked about in a previous episode, is about telling your story. They both are hand in hand. Selling helps tell the story. So make sure you're working on that. work on the art of your selling as well, because that helps tell your story. All of these things all build together your fundamentals that tell your story. But your moves are really a very small part of it if you're trying to really build up and connect with your crowd. So you get the little baby face in there. Little baby face jumps in, and there's a big brooding heel. And then all of a sudden, they go for the lockup. Right there, you've started the story before they even done it. Just circling each other. You can show expression on your face of, I don't know what I'm going to do to get out of this, but this dude is huge. And then you get a little bit of confidence, like maybe I can overpower him. And then he pushes you to the ground and he's flexing, showing off, or he's attacking, whatever. But if he just pushes, throws you to the ground, you're like, whoa, that was a lot. You're like, but you know what? I think I can do this. It's the little engine that could. You lock up a second time. He shoves you down again, and he's jow-jacking the crowd, saying how you're weak like everybody here, blah, 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 whatever. And the crowd's now getting angry. And then the third time you say, okay, and this is when you outsmart. You come in for that lockup. You duck under him. You start hitting. Maybe you turn him around, hit him with a bunch of strikes, come off the ropes. Your house of fire. You're hitting him with as many things you can, like multiple clotheslines. He's kind of selling, whatever. And then all of a sudden he just cuts you off. Either cheap because he's losing, and heels, that's a trick. Use your cheap shots when you're losing, not just because. You can do that if it's a character thing, but it has more impact in the story when you use it as a last-ditch effort. Like if he's wailing on you and he's about to hit you with something big and you thumb the eye when the ref, or you find a way to cheat, or like a quick pull, whatever it is, then you take back over and then slow it down. That's a big thing with storytelling in wrestling. We need to slow it down. A lot of wrestlers are going too fast, and you think that that's popping the crowd. But here's the problem. You're popping the crowd in the wrong way. Working the way that you're working, where you're hitting 5,000 moves back to back to back, and you're going to do 800 cutters and all this stuff, and high spot after splash after splash after blah, blah, blah. You're right. You're making the crowd cheer, but they're not invested. They're cheering because then it becomes like watching dancing monkeys, and it's just that part of the circus, like, yay, but nobody cares. You know what one of the most suspenseful things when you go to the circus is when you watch them do a high wire act. They know what they're doing. They're well in, and they will sell you some stuff in there. They will tell you a story like they're going to screw up. It does happen where they play it, and they add that suspense. That's what you're doing. So you hit all these moves, you get everybody to cheer, but there's no suspense. So then it dies out, and then everybody's burnt out because you've burnt them out. If you build your story slow, start small, and then get it bigger and bigger and bigger in that match, where finally whatever you're doing at the end is the big explosion. That's how you get a crowd invested. You want to have peaks and valleys in your story in the ring. So you have your heel take over on the little guy and slow it down, grind him down to a pace, put him in holds, make the crowd almost to the point of being like, oh God, this is boring. He's just getting the shit kicked out of him. And then have your heel screw up. Have them gloat too long, put somebody in a corner, put them in the ground, whatever, and get out of the way of a move or outtink them. You have to play the story that you're outthinking this big lug who's just using brute force and not really being calculating. And this can be flipped in another way with a heel being a smart heel and stuff like that. But there's a lot of different stories. So this is just the base concept I'm throwing at you. But you have to tell the story so that everybody is rooting for this little guy who keeps coming back but keeps getting cut down. And you have to do it. You don't want to overdo it. So you have to find a good medium where they're still getting over as like, oh, they're a big plucky baby face, or, like trying really hard, but also not making them look like too much of a Superman. You have to find that balance in telling the story, and you can build it up. You can get to the end where finally the baby face is going to go for some big move. They've come back from adversity after adversity, and they keep fighting back, almost being pinned, but finding ways out, outsmarting the heel. The heel keeps cutting him off, and now the crowd really wants to see this babyface like get over, and the heel is getting worried. You can see it in his face as he's getting rocked, and he knows he's in trouble, so he pulls a foreign object, hides it in his hand. Babyface comes off the ropes or off the top, and he punches him with it, hits him, knocks him flat. Crowd sees there was a foreign object. He chucks it out of the ring and lays down on the babyface. 1, 2, 3. Babyface, loses. Heel cheated to win. Babyface gets the pop from the crowd because the story you told is they were working so hard and then they got cut off. And now you know what they want to see? They want to see you come back and do that again. They want to see you get your comeuppance on them. And that's the point of telling a story, is you want them to come back to see the comeuppance and see them do it again. But you gave them a story in that time that was pretty clear cut. And then they'll be interested to see if you do it again, if you can get over on them, if you can make it happen. That's where you have to build your story. Don't worry about trying to build elaborate storylines about who's screwing who and who's doing this and now there's 6 people involved. That stuff gets really confusing on the indies unless you're running weekly and you have ways for people to ingest all that deep story writing. That's great for TV. They have 3 hours a week of national TV, and they're going to get that done. You can't do that on an indie show as a wrestler. You can try, but it always comes out muddy. So you need to, promoters, bookers, simplify it down. Not every match has to have some elaborate story. Some matches just need to be a story in the ring right then to help get those 2 characters over so people know who they are for the future. Some of those, you have to have that. And your big finishing story doesn't have to have a big thing until you've built up a fan base that follows your crowd or follows your workers. And even then, you don't want to make it too over the top. You want to make it so that the biggest problem is I see it in the indies a lot. Promoters are trying to be fucking Vince McMahon, and they're trying to book these elaborate, weird, like deep stories that everyone can get invested in. Here's the thing. You're trying to get new people in every show. Every show, you want new people. You want new customers. You want to keep growing. You don't want to just have the same 100 people who are into your show, which is great to have a faithful following, but they're not going to pay your bills long term. You need more. You want to grow. You want your stuff seen to a larger audience. You want your wrestlers to be able to wrestle in front of a larger audience. So when you're booking your stories for your show, make those shows their own little circus, their own little thing. You can have a couple of things to tease for the next month, but don't get so elaborate with it. Simplify it down to the most basic. And your basic needs, wants, whatever. Someone wants title shots. Somebody feels cheated. Somebody was angry that somebody else did something to them, turned their back on them. Basic stuff. You don't have to get really deep with it. And you don't have to get that elaborate. You don't need 6 different none of you are fucking M. Night Shyamalan. So stop with the twists and the turns and the weird shit. Just make your show basic and build from that and grow. Stop trying to put too much into your matches. That's for wrestlers too. Make your story a little more basic. Bring it back to basics. Tell the story in the ring. And don't try to make it like, well, my character has this deep-seated issue with blah, 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 blah. No one gives a fuck. Let's be real. You're creating a TV character for a show that does not have TV. So start with making the broadest basic character that people can connect to. All your other deep little stuff doesn't really matter. If you need it in the back of your head to help you, that's fine. But don't be a mark for yourself when it comes to like suddenly you're creating these deep stories that nobody knows your background. If you can't describe and tell your story of who you are and what you're about in a sentence to 2 sentences, a crowd is not going to get it when you're in the ring. So if you get in the ring and I have to know that you were beaten by a bunch of baby seals as a child in a pier, and I need to know all this to really understand how you wrestle in the ring, then you're lost it. You've lost the plot. If I need to know that you're part of some big thing for me to understand why you do what you do, then you've lost the plot and you won't tell the story. What you're telling is garbage that no one's going to pay attention to. That those average fans that walk in who are casual fans who might remember pro wrestling as they were a kid or anything like that, they're not going to remember that. What they're going to remember is, I watched this cool match, this big barbarian dude beat up this little skater dude or whatever the gimmicks are, and it was rough, and he got through it, and he did XYZ, and then pulled it off. That's the stuff that they're going to buy into, not your own weird, deep acting exercise that you're doing. If you need that to get yourself in the ring to work, that's one thing, but don't expect the fans to understand it if you have to do that big of an explanation. If you have to really get people to understand the deep psyche of what you're doing, then they're not going to buy into it. I mean, it's just that simple. You have to bring it back. Stop trying to be so complicated. Wrestling is one of the easiest businesses in the world that is complicated by our own people that are in it. We make it more difficult than it is. It is the most basic storytelling of plays of good and evil that you can see, but we try to complicate it for our own egos because we get bored. We don't realize the magic we're creating when we do this, when we get in that ring. You get bored because you think you have to do this. You can always evolve and improve. I'm not saying don't do that, but the problem is that wrestlers, I think, get so bored with the mundane of what they're doing of it because it becomes second nature that they try to pop themselves. And that's another thing, is don't tell stories for the boys in the back and the girls in the back. Stop that. You're not there to pop them. They'll respect you when you're drawing crowds and making everybody money and the crowd is coming in. That's when you get the respect. And that's what it's about, is you want to entertain that crowd and draw more people in. There'll always be wrestlers in the back, and there's going to be wrestlers that hate you, respect you, are indifferent to you, or whatever. I have all of them. There's wrestlers who hate me, wrestlers who love me, wrestlers who could give two shits if I'm in a ring or if I'm in the area. But if you're working for the back and trying to tell a story for the back, you're not telling your story for the right people. So you need to bring it down for your crowd. Remember, wrestling fans, while some are smart, most of them are not. Most wrestling fans are kids, and most wrestling fans are just there for the excitement and the escape of the story that you're telling. It's not about the how many moves you put in and your fucking work rate. Don't get me started on all that bullshit. But it's about entertaining the crowd. I really don't care if the wrestlers in the back give a shit about what I do. Like, when I get out in the ring, what I care about when I'm in the ring is I'm telling a story that the crowd can connect to and enjoy. If the crew in the back enjoys it, cool. If they don't like my style, that's cool too. But as long as those paid customers enjoy seeing me or hate me and want me to get beat up by the babyface or whatever I'm doing, that's what I care about. And that's what you need to care about. Stop being marks for yourselves and tell the story in the ring and actually use psychology, not just because you know a bunch of moves. Any monkey can learn moves. Anyone can be trained to do a bunch of moves. They don't matter. What matters is if that crowd can buy into you, you can go out there and do way less. Hulk Hogan, who is actually a trained, full technical wrestler, can do a lot of stuff. Doesn't have to do it. Why? Because they bought into him. He had a look, he had a style, he had a charisma, and he had a character that they bought into. John Cena can wrestle, but he doesn't have to. He can do his 5 moves of doom, but you're going to watch him because you bought into him. And that's the point. You don't have to be, this big deal of like this walking wrestling, phenom to get a crowd to be invested in you. You need to worry about getting that crowd invested in you. You need to do that with your fundamentals of telling your story in the ring. It's the most important part of this. That's all I'm going to talk about today. Please join my Patreon. You'll see it in the links in the descriptions for this show. I have a YouTube. I'm rebuilding the YouTube channel. I will have a new YouTube channel pretty soon for just this. It's under my normal name right now because I am horrible with the back-end tech stuff. It's not my thing. I'm doing my best, but I want to get this out here. So I hope everybody's having a great day. All you indie wrestlers out there, promoters, I hope your seats are filled, booked to the brim this weekend. Wrestlers, I hope you're out there. And here's an exercise for you. I want every indie wrestler out there this weekend, when you get out there and you go get booked and you're out doing your shows, I want you to get in the ring with your opponent, and I want you to figure out your base story. I don't care who's winning or losing, but what I want you to do is I want you to pick a story that you're going to tell in that match. A specific story, whether it be you're going to work a body part or you're going to do one specific thing and get the crowd to buy into whatever that is. And I want you to do it. Try it. Try to tell the story just in the ring, but actually tell the story, not just hit a bunch of moves. And I guarantee you, you're going to see your money go up when people want to buy your shit, and you're going to see the crowds go up when everybody's telling a story together. Love you all. Make sure you take care of each other. Be safe on the road, and I'll see you down the road right here at the Book It Like a Beast Pro Wrestling Podcast.